If you're unemployed, it isn't because there's no work. There is and always will be work to be done. What we don't always have is jobs. Let's back up a little bit. In this episode, we're looking at a uniquely capitalist failure: meaningless jobs and the unemployed masses. We'll unpack both of these phenomena and the different elements of a capitalist economy that shape our relationship to work. Every economic system to date has had its problems. Only under capitalism, however, has finding meaningful and useful work been an issue. It is a uniquely modern problem for an economy to be structured so that hundreds of thousands of people are without a meaningful job, and at the same time, hundreds of thousands have their most basic human needs going unmet. Our modern society is the only one in which people are both going without food and shelter, and it is actively disincentivized to organize things in a way that would help them. All of us can look around at our communities, our cities, our country, and see that there are things that need to be done, that there are issues we can all agree upon and want to see resolved. But we all know that there is only so much we can do as individuals. Whether it's because we work long hours and need time to rest, because we're unemployed and need to actively look for a job, or because we're in a precarious situation ourselves, most of us have barely enough time and energy, if any at all, to feed the hungry, house the homeless, or generally better our lives and those of the people around us. Many of us work jobs that feel completely devoid of meaning, that seem to help no one, and we still can't spend our time in more meaningful ways because we too need a steady wage to keep a roof over our head and food on our table. We are trapped, and it seems nearly impossible to get out. In the midst of all this, finding a decent job has become incredibly difficult. Long gone are the days of walking into a bank, asking to see the manager, and starting at a desk the same day. Industrial jobs have steadily declined for decades, and even the relative security of a college education has waned as more graduates go into low-wage or even unpaid entry-level jobs. There is little hope that this generation will achieve the financial stability of our parents. And for those who entered the job market at the height of the pandemic particularly, employment has been lagging far behind expected levels. So, how did we get here? 3 different elements of capitalist society play into our current relationship with work: the profit motive, capitalism's purposeful misallocation of labor, and the crises that are built into the system's proper function. Let's start with the profit motive. At the heart of our current crisis is the fact that the profit motive, the feature that capitalists have told us makes capitalism so efficient, does a terrible job at properly allocating for human needs. Capitalists frame it like this: if you are incentivized to make profits, and the only way you can do that is by providing something that somebody else needs, a service or a product, self-interest will naturally transform into common good. Reality, however, turns out very differently. Not only can profit be generated in entirely speculative ways that don't benefit anybody, think cryptocurrency traders, but in just about every sector of the economy, the profit motive does more to pervert the common good than enhance it. In the pursuit of higher profits, companies will destroy brand new items, purposely build flaws into their product so they'll become obsolete faster, or throw away perfectly good food. As a direct result of the profit motive, our planet is increasingly polluted and we live progressively more wasteful lives. But the market of goods isn't the only place capitalism's incentives don't work in our favor. When work enters into the equation, we see the same thing happen. The endless search for profits leads people at the very top of our society to make far more than they could ever need or spend. At the bottom forms a vast chasm of crushing poverty, and it all starts at hiring. In the hiring process, the profit motive consistently leads the managerial class to offer lower wages, worse benefits, longer hours, and more dangerous working conditions to potential employees so that they can be the tiniest bit more profitable and gain a sliver of an edge over the competition. Workers face a similar dilemma, offering to be paid the minimum they can afford if it means they can guarantee getting a salary over the next person. Thanks to the profit motive, it is in the interest of the company to hire the fewest people, give them the least amount of money, and work them as much as possible to extract every last penny the competition isn't extracting themselves. But at the same time, the profit motive leads companies to offer jobs that are increasingly meaningless, but very profitable to shareholders. We'll get to that in a second. But first, let's look at the flip side of the coin: unemployment. While the profit motive can explain part of the equation, our lack of jobs is explained by another feature of the capitalist economy: For a capitalist system to function, it is absolutely essential for some people to be unemployed. This is called the natural rate of unemployment, and it is one of the foundational elements of our 21st century stage of capitalism. For companies to consistently push wages down in a capitalist economy, thereby increasing their profits, staying competitive, and retaining complete control over labor, two things must be guaranteed. One, there must be an available pool of desperate workers to pull from. There needs to be that segment of people experiencing not only unemployment and the heavy mental burden that comes with it, but also dire need so that an otherwise unappealing job gets filled. Hence the reason capitalists are so staunchly against sensible welfare provisions. So long as people are desperate enough, capitalists can cycle them in and out of jobs that barely allow them to maintain an acceptable standard of living. Two, and intimately tied with the first point, firing workers must be as easy as possible. Having a mass of unemployed, ready-to-work people available helps, but so does knocking down the barriers put up by unionized labor and government regulations so the threat of unemployment becomes more tangible. Were this not the case, profits would not be maximized for the capitalist class and their version of efficiency, slowly pushing them out of the market in favor of their more ruthless competitors. The quest to maximize profit therefore naturally pushes people into unemployment and artificially creates a scarcity of jobs. In other words, in order for the system to work properly, there must always be a reserve army of labor, a section of the population unemployed and actively worse off. In theory, economists estimate this to be around 5% of the workforce, a percentage of people who are unemployed but only for a short time. In reality, unemployment is maintained at a much higher rate, and includes far more people in both longer-term and more dire unemployment. Otherwise, hiring stops being quite so flexible and profitable for the owner class. This fact makes capitalism pretty unappealing. No society should only survive off the backs of underpaid workers and a steady flow of the desperately unemployed who face homelessness. But it doesn't end there. The profit motive and the overall organization of our economy pervert the notion of jobs entirely. Specifically, useful jobs are made unrewarding, while useless jobs become lucrative. This is David Graeber's thesis. Graeber was an anthropologist most well known for his 2018 book Bullshit Jobs. In this book, Graeber observes something we all know to be true. Some jobs exist solely to make the rich more money and to keep us working. Contrary to what we've long been told, that as technology improves, automation will ease our work week to fewer and fewer hours so we can more completely enjoy our lives away from the necessary labor required to maintain it, our capitalist society has tightened its grip on exploitation for exploitation's sake. Instead of phasing out human labor as more and more jobs become obsolete, allowing us to reap the benefits of an advanced economy where humans don't need to perform all essential labor, the quest for profit has created new jobs that serve entirely to boost numbers on a computer screen, accumulate the wealth and power of a greedy few, and keep the masses locked into jobs that alienate us and exhaust us too much to fight for meaningful change. Despite a decline in farming and industry jobs, we produce enough to cover far more basic needs and general goods than we could ever require. So where did the jobs go? According to Graeber, jobs became meaningless. In a complete reversal of capitalist theory, where jobs should disappear as they become unnecessary, useless jobs have become a fixture of our modern economy. We work for work's sake. The numbers are on Graeber's side. In a poll of the British workforce, a full 37% of those surveyed felt their jobs were meaningless, and an additional 13% didn't know if their jobs made any meaningful contribution to the world. That's 50% of jobs. Half of jobs are deemed by those who do them to be pointless. Paradoxically, these are often the white-collar, highly valued, and most lucrative jobs that fall into this unfulfilling dead end. These are not the essential workers spotlighted by the pandemic, whom we all saw are foundational to our survival. It's not the minimum wage workers who work meaningless jobs. Instead, a capitalist system that pursues growth for growth's sake and drags us along, forcing countless workers into aimless employment with the threat of starvation, creates a landscape of pointless labor that serves only to keep the machine running smoothly for the benefit of those at the controls. The masses work not for the common good, but to accrue financial capital for the disproportionately small ruling minority. If things were different, if we did cast off these pointless jobs that might as well not exist, our entire system would come undone. Homelessness, the 40-hour workweek, minimum wage jobs, None of it would be justifiable if we eliminated our attachment to the profit motive, the delusion of infinite growth, and the ridiculous idea that we all need to put more than half our waking hours into a job regardless of its necessity so that we can simply pay for our miserable existence. At this point, we should acknowledge that there is currently a labor shortage in minimum wage, particularly restaurant jobs. The reality of this situation, however, is not born out of any real shortage of people looking for a job, or the existence of too strong a social safety net, or a sudden lack of need for restaurants. People are realizing that when corporate lawyers make hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a year protecting multi-billion-dollar companies from the repercussions of their harmful cost-cutting, offering the bare minimum poverty wage of $7.25 an hour, not providing benefits or flexibility for an appropriate work-life balance, or even a safe work environment for a necessary job is not going to get people lining up to work for you. Ultimately, the combination of a job market that actively pushes people into unemployment or meaningless jobs, kicks wages down to the lowest possible rung, and makes it unprofitable to provide for the needy despite our ability and desire to do so, creates an infinite cycle of worsening conditions. A more thinly stretched economy justifies austerity measures for out-of-touch governments. It continues to concentrate wealth at the top, and it makes it even easier for a greater degree of exploitation to be forced upon the working masses. Here we get to the final piece of the puzzle, the regular destabilization of capitalism. Every few years, in recent decades about every 5 to 10 years on average, the entire economy crashes and enters a recession or depression. Huge portions of the population lose their jobs, the banks are bailed out, and after much suffering, mostly by the poor, things return to a new normal within a couple of years. Now just a little bit more fragile and a little bit more unequal. These crises, like the inaccurate rating of subprime mortgages in 2008 or the start of the pandemic in 2020, far from being the unexpected product of random happenings across the world, are a structural feature of a capitalist economy. And this is not a new idea. Non-capitalist economists anticipated the fragility of capitalism over 100 years ago. As Marx observed, and has been proven right time and time again as economic crises occur and continue to multiply, capitalism has a natural tendency to fall into crises as a result of what he called the falling rate of profit. Because capitalism naturally creates monopolies and the concentration of wealth into fewer and fewer hands, the rate of returns on investments continually falls. Over time, this problem balloons until investing money is less and less useful, stagnating an economy that needs to grow endlessly to survive, inevitably crashing it and dragging countless millions of human beings into precarity. Long-term sustainability is sacrificed at the cost of a fragile but functioning economy, liable to collapse at any moment. And when it does, it isn't capital that suffers, it's labor. Regular people end up without a job and without a safety net. The point of this video is not that we should do what every president has promised since the beginning and create more jobs. As we've seen, more jobs don't always make things better if those jobs are pointless, alienating, dangerous, or demeaning. What we need is to better recognize the role jobs are meant to play and make them reflect that role more accurately. Jobs should not just be a way to make money, for ourselves or for the executives. Work, whether it's within the framework of a job or not, should be conducted with the express purpose of improving the human condition, at both the individual and societal level. This is clearly not what wage-based labor accomplishes. Think of how many different things we could achieve if we committed our labor to our needs. We could improve our infrastructure in long-sighted and sustainable ways, build up our green energy capacity, increase the amount of available housing, focus on our local agriculture, make tangible, positive changes. These projects are rarely profitable, and that's why we don't see them today. Despite wage labor being at the center of a capitalist economy, it is neither natural nor eternal, and as we've seen, it makes people infinitely exploitable. It is not to be desired. Every socialist, at some point or another, has arrived or will arrive at this conclusion and argue that it is this unfair exchange, this contradiction between those who hire and those who sell their labor, that is at the core of our biggest societal challenges. Seen through this lens, work is not simply an economic practice, it is a political act. As people who want a better future, whether you consider yourself socialist yet or not, it is therefore our goal to politicize work in a more just way, whether that's through co-ops, unionization, or direct democratic control. Countless theories on work, compensation, and political economy have been devised by socialist thinkers over the years. But at the end of the day, the vision of labor that most settle on looks something like this. Work is an essential facet of life. However, it is far from being what life is about. The purpose of human life is not to toil endlessly. Living can be so much more. It is a myriad of things, from enjoying or creating art or good food, to forming meaningful relationships or bettering oneself. Work only facilitates that. And while labor can and should include some of these pleasures, fundamentally, work is only how we guarantee our ability to experience life. Under our current system, work doesn't have this role. It serves to generate profit, and since there is no natural cap to how much profit is desirable, neither is there a cap to how much work is deemed necessary. We are made to work more and more. The truth is that we can achieve all the necessary and even luxurious outcomes of work with far fewer hours, far fewer years of our lives, and far better conditions. The only reason that we don't is that a profit-based economy simply does not function that way. In a world of prosperity, we have been made to endlessly toil for the benefit of tyrants, for people we will never meet, and often whose names we do not even know. In order to build the future we deserve, we must dismantle the system that abuses work, this most fundamental of human endeavors.